Good afternoon, everyone. We're delighted you've taken this time to be with us today. On behalf of the 5-star accredited Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce, I want to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Mike Dotson. I'm the chair of the Healthcare Division. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and thank our sponsors. The webinar is generally sponsored today by MD Anderson Cancer Center and Memorial Hermann Sugarland Hospital. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mathew Kelly, COO of Memorial Hermann Sugarland Hospital, and ask him to say a few remarks.
Hey, thanks, Mike. I just want to say how excited we are to be able to sponsor this talk today. I think it's a very important talk about innovation in healthcare. Really excited about the panel that you guys have today. I just wanted to quickly highlight a couple of our innovation solutions that we have in place to make healthcare more accessible for all of our community, and that's through our virtual care platform, where you can get connected with one of our MHMG PCPs. And we also offer 24/7 virtual urgent care, where you can be connected with a provider within 10 minutes, and they can create a personalized diagnosis and treatment plan, including any necessary prescriptions. And finally, I'd like to mention our telehealth program, which is our 24/7 nurse health line. And that's a free service for anyone living in Texas. When you're feeling sick, but you're not quite sure where to go or where to turn to, you're able to call this line and they can help triage and get you to the right setting of care, whether that's an ED or an urgent care. All of that and more is listed on our website at memorialhermann.org. I encourage everyone to go check it out. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate that. And Dr. Flores, would you like to say some words on behalf of MD Anderson, our other sponsor?
Sure. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. So I'm with the MD Anderson Innovation Department, and we're excited to be here to tell you about what we are doing at both the MD Anderson main campus in downtown Houston in the Texas Medical Center, but also right there in Sugarland at our Houston area location. So I hope you guys enjoy today, and thanks for having us.
Thank you both. We really appreciate your sponsorship and all that you do. Before I introduce the panelists, I'd like to have the audience call their attention to the chat feature. If you have any questions, just type them at the bottom of the screen. We'll address the questions at the conclusion. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists before we get started. First up is Dr. Schwarna Balasubramaniam. She is a surgeon, inventor, and now full-time medical device entrepreneur. She is founder of Noleus Technology, a Houston-based medical device company focused on developing and commercializing innovative technologies intended to accelerate recovery and to improve outcomes after surgery. She is a board-certified colorectal and general surgeon and has 20 years of experience in practice. She completed medical school and general surgical training at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. So welcome. Next up is Dr. Lance Black, who is the Associate Director of the Texas Medical Center's TMCX and Biodesign programs. Dr. Black served previously as Medical Device Innovation Lead and draws on his extensive military and medical and engineering expertise to support the resident companies of TMCX in developing innovative healthcare technologies. After earning his BS in biological engineering from Louisiana State University, go Tigers, and his MD from LSU Health Science Center in New Orleans, Dr. Black served in the U.S. Air Force and deployed overseas twice, first as Chief of Medical Staff for Manas Transit Base in Kyrgyzstan, and then as Squadron Flight Surgeon in Okinawa, Japan. So welcome, Doc. Next, Dr. Ashvin Dewan is a practicing orthopedic surgeon at Houston Methodist Hospital in Sugarland and co-founder of Case Control, which is a software platform for coordinating surgery. In addition to managing sports-related injuries, Dr. Dewan is passionate about enhancing delivery of surgical care. As CMO at Case Control, he is the visionary behind their software as a service platform that leverages AI, automation, and predictive analytics. Dr. Dewan earned his Bachelor of Science in Bioengineering from Rice, graduating summa cum laude, and then completed his medical degree from Baylor College of Medicine. Welcome, Doc. Last up is Dr. Aaron Flores, who holds a BS in biomedical science and a PhD in genetics from Texas A&M University. Her postdoc research focused on shared family markers for early life cancers, and her graduate research focused on finding a link between, quote, tasty cows, end quote, and, quote, bug-resistant cows, end quote. And then she says the spoiler is that the link doesn't exist. Her Swiss Army knife skill set uniquely positions her to handle the countless variable and sometimes downright inexplicable types of work that she does in innovation. Having navigated the research world and been part of the healthcare entrepreneurship, Erin's innovations go-to for finding, weighing, and thinking about partnership possibilities with many, many healthcare tech startups on the horizon. She is the innovation pipeline manager for strategy and innovation at MD Anderson Cancer Center. That was a mouthful. So with all that said, let's go ahead and start with the presentation. Dr. Black, I'll start with you, and then I'll just kind of direct through the panel. But first, I'd ask that you give a quick overview of your organization, and then talk about any different projects you're involved with to advance innovation in the healthcare sector, and I guess in any intended future results and implication associated with those innovations. With that said, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Black.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for participating. And thanks to Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce for tackling an issue that's really challenging and difficult. Whenever we say innovation, everybody always has their own definition of what that means. And what it means to TMC is really increasing the density of startup healthcare companies that are focused on really changing the face of how we're going to practice medicine in the future. We primarily focus on those that are in the medical device industry, as well as digital health, as well as getting into cancer therapeutics is one of our new avenues now going through one of our programs. Underneath TMC Innovation exists 3 programs. TMCX, which is a medical device and digital health accelerator. This is where we invite companies from all over the world to Houston for a matter of 6 months, where they spend time with us exploring opportunities between one of our health systems or one of our corporate partners and themselves. And those meaningful relationships could be anything from joint development opportunities, clinical trials, pilot studies, you name it. They're validating the next generation's medical technology right here in Houston. So we're really proud about TMCX in that program. TMC Biodesign, where we're actually building companies. So we hire what we call fellows to start companies from scratch. We give them time within our health system to really explore and understand where some of the unmet clinical needs. And then from there, they develop solutions. And around that solution, a commercial entity that spins out as a startup company at the end of 12 months. And then finally, TMC Act, which is Advancing Cancer Therapeutics Startup Accelerator as well, focused on cancer therapeutics. This is more on the earlier side, the translational side. We're looking at labs with novel molecules and technologies that are looking to transfer this into a commercial entity like a startup. And so understanding what are those first steps that you need to take and taking really interesting science and putting it into a commercial entity. And so TMC Innovation is very proud of these 3 programs, but not only that, the community that we've been able to form over the past 6 years of entrepreneurs, of providers, of subject matter experts, really the community or the village needed to take a product from, on the back of a napkin all the way through to where it's actually making a meaningful impact on our patients. And so right in your backyard, you have some amazing things happening, and really proud to serve on this panel with some friends of mine, colleagues of mine that I've been able to work with in doing this very mission. So thanks for having me, and happy to answer any questions later on.
Well, thank you. That was great. Dr. Flores, if you'll go.
Sure. So MD Anderson is one of the world's largest cancer centers, or one of the nation's largest cancer centers, one of the top cancer centers in the U.S. for sure. And over the last 5 years, we have actually implemented a new department, which is mine, which is strategy and innovation. Historically, innovation in MD Anderson connote new cancer therapies and cutting edge drugs and pharmaceuticals. But our department really focuses on digital health innovation. And so we really like to bring in, exciting new technologies that fit into institutional strategic initiatives. And so we want to make sure that we deliver not just groundbreaking therapeutics and procedures for our cancer patients, but also exceptional digital experiences for them. And so that is really my department's role in the institution. And you know, we partner with folks like TMCX and other innovation centers and other health systems across the nation, and make sure that we can really deliver those experiences and remain as relevant and cutting edge on the digital front as possible.
Thank you. Dr. Dewan.
Yeah, hey there. Thanks for having me on the panel. Thanks to Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce and our sponsors that allow us to have this discussion today. You know, Case Control, we're a digital platform that allows for the management of perioperative care and leverages a lot of the modern tools such as AI and predictive analytics to reduce complications, increase patient and surgeon satisfaction, deliver basically a better patient experience using the tools that patients and our consumers, I guess, as you call them, would have learned to expect now from our medical practices. This kind of grew out of a personal passion. I was kind of shocked to learn as I was growing and building my practices how often patients and staff would be unprepared for their surgeries on the day of, and far too often it would lead to cancellations or miscommunications or a less than perfect experience. So really took a step back and said, you know, how do we create the red carpet experience for patients? And that's kind of how Case Control grew. I've been blessed. I've been exposed to a lot of the amazing resources we have in Houston and the Texas Medical Center and within Fort Bend County. I've been privileged to work with Dr. Black through TMCX and have got a great kind of foundation on how to grow a company and build a company in our Houston and Fort Bend innovation ecosystem. We have a lot of cool resources in town. You know, we've been exposed to the Rice Alliance, which has really helped us tap into our local community. And, you know, and G-Beta is a growing program also in this area that has been very valuable in helping us understand how to successfully grow and build a company. So I think in healthcare, you know, the time for innovation is ripe. And, you know, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, you know, the pandemic has really accelerated that and helped, you know, healthcare embrace innovation. So we're very happy and excited about what we can offer the community.
Really good. Thank you. Dr. Balasubramaniam.
Mike, that's amazing that you can say my name. Please call me Swarna. So thank you everyone for sponsoring this. You know, I've been excited to think about innovation, and especially trying to see if Sugarland and Fort Bend County would be excited to do something. So it's particularly nice to have this panel and see there's a lot of smart minds right here in Fort Bend County, and we could get something going. So I've been a resident of Sugarland and practice in private practice for the past 12 years, mostly out of Houston Methodist Sugarland Hospital, back when it was a 30-bed hospital and grown to the colossus it is today. So, you know, I stopped practice last year because my company had grown to a point where it required my attention full time. So in the years of practice, I saw the problem of, you know, bowel recovery after abdominal surgery. So that's what I did mostly, abdominal surgery. And it was a problem that was unsolved. And through insights, I was able to see, oh, we have a solution, and taking a technology, repurposing it, developing a new device and solving the problem. And we've grown from an idea that I had at the end of 2015 to a device that has shown function and safety in animal trials, and we're on our way to getting into the FDA. So we office out of the TMC, and Lance and his team have supported us enormously, and we're really grateful. I was a practicing physician and had no idea how to build a company. And through many of the resources that Ashvin talked about, that, you know, through Rice and through G-Beta and Mass Challenge as well, we've been able to grow and get to the point where we are. And I think Houston has a lot to offer, and a particular pet project of mine is to get more physicians involved with with healthcare innovation. I think physicians have some special things to offer. One, they really understand the problems, and I think that is I see missing sometimes when people start on these problems, and not just the medical side of the problem, but the workflow solution, especially so important in healthcare innovation and digital innovation. I think Ashvin touched on that. When you finally come to adoption, there's nothing like having lived through the problem to see where it fits in. And so I'm excited to go forward. I think, the opportunity to help many people at once is exciting. And I'm also just really excited to see if Fort Bend County can build a little mini center. We've done great at building a clinical medical center, and maybe we can get something started in innovation too. There's a lot of smart minds out here. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. I agree with that. So we've done quite a few of these virtual sessions this year. And when we ask folks what they want to hear about most, I think number one, resoundingly, is the pandemic. So I think we'll start there. And I think maybe discuss specifically how it's affected your own projects. And then more globally, where you've seen innovation work in regards to the pandemic. And then where is there need? Where have we fallen short as a healthcare community? So we'll mix it up a little bit. So we'll go to you, Dr. Dewan.
Yeah, I think like every sector in our society, the pandemic has forced us all to reimagine the way we carry out our lives and that includes the delivery of healthcare. And so for one, it's definitely, I think, has accelerated innovation, particularly in the healthcare scene. Previously hospitals and healthcare administrations would, need months to review and implement new technologies. Well, now with the impetus of a pandemic, that has kind of changed the mindset and the approach to solving, acute problems that the pandemic has presented to our medical community and system. So, if there's a silver lining, I think it's that it's kind of highlighted the value of fast change and shown us that, we won't bring the system tumbling down if we do rapid changes. I think there's always measures that need to be put in place to ensure that things are done safely. But I think it's kind of forced us to test this paradigm of rapid, fast innovation and given people more comfort, I think, embracing that. And so that's I think been one positive thing that's come out of it. As a larger picture, I think it's significantly improved access to healthcare in general, in the sense that, people previously, a virtual visit would be more of an afterthought. But I think now consumers, are much more comfortable having a conversation with their physician by virtual visit and initiating their point of care with that interaction. And I think a few years back, that was kind of considered a novelty and not necessarily something that would be the first line of approach of care. But I think that type of access is probably going to be here to stay. And it has also forced the government to make big changes in terms of reimbursement. And that also really pushes the needle very fast. So I think that has been a wonderful change as a result of the pandemic. And I think that whole new approach has been widely accepted. So I think that's some of the important aspects of the changes we see.
Really good. Thank you. Schwarna.
Mike, thank you so much. So I agree completely with what Ashwin was saying. I think, definitely the innovation has moved really fast. And I think a large part of it is that the insurance companies have also flipped the switch on payments. So, a big part of whether something gets accepted or not definitely has to do with reimbursement. Hospitals really, can't do too many things for free and stay in business. And so that has helped. But I do think that, there are things happening that the public doesn't even see. So certainly they see, virtual visits as a big boon to them. But there's very many interesting things going on in the digital space that we don't even see, as the public facing sees. So there's a company that was in business called Call9 as an example for a couple of years. And basically they were doing, it was an innovative company where they were bringing virtual visits to nursing home patients. So nursing home patients are some of the highest utilizers of emergency rooms, and they get constantly shipped out because there's no real, medical care at nursing homes. And so whenever a patient has a problem, they immediately ship them to the nursing home. And, a lot of the time it would be just a checkup and then to be sent back. And, it's a ton of ambulance charges and ER utilization. Well, this company went into the business of providing, virtual visits to nursing homes using a mid-level provider at the nursing home, and then using specialists on tap to diagnose things. Well, they could not get insurance companies to pay for that at all. And now, thanks to the pandemic and insurance companies seeing the value of virtual visits, that company has been reborn. And basically what they're able to do is keep patients who are, the frailest patients who are most likely to catch COVID, and keep them in the nursing home and provide care there instead of exposing them to so many things. So that's a great example to build off what Ashwin was saying of how innovation has really accelerated in the pandemic. And I think, there's so many things that we can do that, just building off of things like that to improve care for our sickest patients. And, there's a lot of remote care going on, the remote monitoring. And a personal note, my 86-year-old father, who'd never really been a big Zoom user, has learned to use Zoom to talk to his doctors, and he loves it. And it saves him a lot of trouble to go to the doctor. And he was like, where was this before? So, I think it's here to stay. And I think for the better, definitely. So I totally agree with that. So I'll give someone else a chance to give their opinion on this.
Really good. Thank you. Dr. Black.
Thanks, Mike. Really, two things come to mind when I think of 2020 and what it represents, but also more importantly, kind of what it highlighted about the strength of startups. I work with entrepreneurs every single day, and they are constantly kind of tease them and say, you're kind of like a prophet. You're trying to tell everybody where the future is going, yet people continue to reject you. You're trying to have them share your vision of the future. And, with that comes a lot of conversations and telling your story over and over and over and trying to understand what's going to incentivize people to make that move, whether it's a payer, a stakeholder within the hospital, or even physician adoption. And so they're constantly trying to convince people to share the same vision of the future. And the pandemic really revealed to me and to some of our founders the same thing. Is like telehealth is not new, right? People on the innovation side of things, we're already in level 4.0 of telehealth. We're thinking about how to further enhance it. This is back when people are using telehealth, I don't know, for 10 to 20 visits per day. Now they're using it for 4,000 to 5,000 visits per day. And they're like, oh wait, this is something new to us. What do we do? And so now they're looking at our entrepreneurs and our founders as people who are, cutting edge, understand how to work with the new technology. And it's really critical that they appreciate that not only that they're able to do that, but they can pivot quickly. So in times of things like the pandemic, J&J is not going to do a quick pivot and release a new product. They can do some modifications, but it's our startups who actually understand how to pivot. They're masters at it. And that's actually what makes them competitive against some of these larger strategics. So it kind of just really highlighted to me, what are the advantages of being in the startup industry and startup culture? It's its own breed of animal. And I don't think people really appreciate that. They quite frankly think of innovation as, somebody has an idea and then that J&J comes and buys that idea. That's not how it works, right? So there's this huge process that takes place. And within that process are these individuals, this community who really is paid to think about the future. They've already thought about pandemics. They're already thinking about what it's going to take to scale up telehealth. They're already thinking about, Ashvin mentioned AI. I mean, that's a whole nother world we can explore and have conversations around that people aren't even really thinking about because they're so consumed with their day-to-day issues. And they have to be, right? They have to operate the hospital. They can't be paid to think about the future like our entrepreneurs can. So 2020 really kind of it was a proving point for us, and it really brought to light a lot of opportunities, I think, by allowing our great entrepreneurs like Ashvin and Swarna to just, present their ideas and their technologies and be able to make a difference. for these patients. So for us internally, we were able to go everything virtual. We're able to extend our network now. We can actually reach out and have people from all over the world participate in our program. So we're talking to, startup companies out of Denmark, out of UK, a lot of times out of Israel, and really understand not only what kind of products or technology they're bringing to the table, but what are their health systems doing? How are their health systems reacting to this? And how is it that it's different than ours? And how can we implement changes to make things more efficient? And so there's a lot of learning to be had on the innovation side. I think the pandemic really opened up a lot of opportunities for us to do that.
Thanks. Dr. Flores?
Yeah, I think I'll just echo what everybody else has said. We, as an institution, most healthcare institutions are very slow to test new ideas. They're very risk averse for good nature. We're dealing with, human lives, not an A/B market campaign to see which one works better for different consumer populations. So historically, it's just been a slog to get new innovation into large systems. So the pandemic has absolutely put a sense of urgency into finding new solutions and implementing them very quickly because of the urgency of the pandemic itself. And so we have adapted to that and adopted that mindset for several things. We were able to launch, virtual care in a seamless way for patients. We were able to explore remote diagnostics and remote monitoring, which just means, you can reach out to your clinicians if you have symptoms. We could send you a Bluetooth connected blood pressure cuff or a thermometer to help you monitor those kinds of symptoms at home. And we would still be able to tap into those data feeds as you provided them to us. So all of those are, we have the largest concentration of immunocompromised patients in the nation, being, a cancer center. And so we take these precautions very seriously. And the more that we can do to make sure that our patients can stay at home while still receiving exceptional care from us is where our mentality is. We want to make sure that when patients are on our campus, they are safe, but they're there only for the things that they absolutely need. And so in our screening processes, I'm sure if any of you have been to a doctor lately, you have to attest that you haven't been in contact with somebody that's had either symptoms or a positive COVID test in the last 14 days, and attest that you haven't tried.
Dr. Flores, I think your volume is cutting out a little bit. So I think we keep things moving, and then I'll jump back. I think once Dr. Flores connects. I think everybody's hit a little bit on AI, and I apologize for asking the same questions to the entire panel, but I feel like everybody's experience is extremely diverse and can kind of bring an interesting sort of dialogue when it comes to these topics. But if you were to talk about AI in your own work or that you're seeing, that would be great. And then ultimately, where you could see AI affecting the entire healthcare sector. And I think we'll start with you, Dr. Black.
That's a tough question. So thanks for starting with me. It's a little bit like asking, what do you think the internet's going to do to medicine? AI is such a terminology is thrown around all the time that it's hard to kind of grasp its ability, and quite frankly, where do you draw the line as far as what AI is concerned? There's multitude of different thoughts on that. So it's still in its early infancy and still defining, particularly as it applies to medicine. We support a number of digital health companies that use the tool of AI explicitly for a particular use case, and Ashvin can talk specifically to this, as his does exactly that. It's going to revolutionize it. I don't know how else to say it besides that it's going to change fundamentally not only how we practice healthcare, but how we categorize physicians, how we think about patient access. I mean, it applies to all aspects of healthcare. So it's a really challenging question to answer more specifically, but I'll kind of just take a step back and maybe let Ashvin take over a little bit more about a detailed use case like case control has.
That's great. So, Dr. Flores, I see you're back on. So we'll go to Dr. Dewan and let him sort of transition there. And then I'll hop back in and let you finish your thought and then any insights that you might have on AI. So Dr. Dewan?
Yeah, thanks, Lance, for the great segue. I think first, maybe I'll take a step back and kind of give you my opinion as AI as a whole. Then I'll kind of drill down into the specific example of how we leverage it in case control. If you guys have been watching the news, you all surely know, how strained the healthcare profession is right now. We have shortages of nurses, we have shortages of supplies. Everything really has become a delicate balancing act with respect to allocation of our constrained resources. And it's significant in today's day and age. A lot of what we medical professionals do, a significant amount of time is kind of allocated to like non-clinical, repetitive, administrative, and bureaucratic tasks that really take away from the traditional practice of medicine. And many of these things we find are repetitive, mundane things that are really ripe for disruption and automation. And because of the acute shortages we have, I think, AI algorithms, artificial intelligence algorithms are great for automating kind of like arduous tasks and things that really anything that is an arduous repetitive thing is usually the computer can outperform humans in those types of tasks. And so, what AI I think will be really handy with, especially in healthcare, is it can really help us deploy better care at scale. For example, a lot of looking at patients and making diagnosis is a lot about pattern recognition. And so, computers are great at flagging things when something deviates from a particular pattern. And so, we're already seeing great strides and implementations of using AI in domains like this. And, for instance, Google AI has a healthcare platform called Lina that looks at abnormal lymph nodes on certain imaging. And, it's a lot of volume of imaging data, but it can comb through it very fast and find when there's something abnormal. And they've done the same thing with like chest x-rays, CT scans, where they can quickly find abnormalities at scale and outperform humans. And I don't think it's going to replace the human, but it's going to be, hey, we looked at these 300 scans, take a look at scans 14 and 20, and because they seem to have something unusual, and it can kind of draw attention to the things that really need the immediate attention. So now kind of drilling down, how does that impact what we're doing? Data is, I think, will allow us to make the patient experience of surgery, for example, much more personalized. Less and less is it being acceptable to do a one-size-fits-all. And, for example, in case control, when a surgeon decides that they want to do surgery, historically, a surgeon will give a patient a stack of information sheets when they book their surgery. And if you kind of read through this stack of information sheets they get to prepare the patient, it almost reads like a logic puzzle. If you are getting this, then do this. If you're a diabetic, then make sure you do this before surgery. And as a patient, it's really quite overwhelming, this volume of information that's being thrown at you. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hydrant. And really a poorly informed patient is the one that's going to potentially end up having complications or issues or a less than smooth experience when they're having their surgery. So we actually have all this data now available to really help tailor a patient's experience when they're undergoing a surgery. It's just we haven't really figured out how to draw all these data sources. And we currently don't have the human capital or bandwidth to prepare each patient individually, for example, with these customized instruction sets that are tailored to their situation. Well, that's where technology can fill that gap and kind of automatically assess a patient, craft a customized instruction set for them, and give it to the patient to consume in small kind of just-in-time snippets, like a text message that can remind them what they need to do to be prepared, for example, their surgery. And we've taken the team can kind of take a step back and focus on day-to-day patient things, but the system can kind of help walk these patients, handhold them. It's kind of like, 1 week before the surgery, they're getting a text, say, stop your aspirin, it's getting close to your surgery, or night before surgery, don't forget to stop eating or drinking after midnight. Simple things, but they can really do a big difference in giving a better patient outcome. And I think, we use these algorithms to kind of risk stratify patients and preemptively prevent complications and situations that could lead to readmissions. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little insight into how we're trying to take advantage of data and using computer systems to make this actionable data.
Really good. Thank you. Dr. Flores, are you back?
I am. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Technology, for what it's worth, is amazing until it's not. So I assume the questions on AI and use cases in healthcare, and MD Anderson is obviously thinking about AI and what it can do for our patients. The horizon for it is of course the personalization and how can we anticipate needs of patients before they even know that they are going to need to utilize a particular resource or are going to need to learn about their upcoming surgery and know that they need to stop certain medications or start some, but also to be able to predict things before they happen. And so we are actually implementing some technology. We've got two AI technologies, one where it will predict patients who are at risk for pressure injuries. We've got patients in the hospital that are in beds for a long time, and pressure injuries for an immunocompromised patient are quite serious and lead to infections and other wounds that are just very difficult to heal for patients. And so we've got a technology right now that takes all kinds of information in from our electronic health record and from a patient's digital chart that can predict and offer, alerts to our nurses and other care teams that, hey, this patient over here in this bed is at risk for a pressure injury, and here are the steps that you should probably take right now to mitigate those risks, to avoid a lot of pain and suffering and cost for the patient, and to make sure that their quality of stay with us is nice. And so then we're thinking about creating a new algorithm with that company to make something that's specific for oncology patients. One thing that they're prone to a lot is a neutropenic fever, and that comes with having your immune system reduced. It comes with having toxic drugs pumped into you, the chemotherapies, to fight the cancer that you have. So thinking about which patients and which risk factors contribute to somebody going into a neutropenic fever, and how can we make sure that we get on top of those things with the stem cell therapies and other cell-based immunotherapies that are really effective. They have really nasty side effects and can cause a really rapid decline that can be fatal if you don't keep your eye on it. So can we also create algorithms with this particular company to predict those events and make sure that we can see them coming, to make sure that they are mitigated before they get too costly or fatal. And then another one that we are working with right now is for clinical trials matching. Our faculty at MD Anderson are all in the pursuit of academic and scholarly interests. And so we have quite a few clinical trials that are at MD Anderson, and they're very precise and they require very perfect patients, for lack of a better word, to get enrolled on those trials. There are very specific criteria that patients have to meet to be able to enroll and participate in some of those trials. And so it's a lot of paperwork to comb through, a lot of patient histories to comb through, to find matches, to make sure that patients are a true match for the trials. And so this is, really matching rules to rules. And we're using AI to help do that faster, instead of having to look with human eyes and reading and perhaps missing critical pieces of information in the patient chart. We're using a technology that is based on AI to help us make those matches faster and better and get more patients groundbreaking care.
Awesome. Thank you. Schwarna.
Mike, thank you. Everyone has had such great examples of AI in practice and where it could work. I want to step back and maybe frame it a different way for our audience here. So, you know, in the 30 years since I graduated from medical school, the word evidence-based medical care has been thrown around a lot. And I think, you know, this is where, you know, I think physicians used to do what they knew, what their experience was, pattern recognition, what worked for them. And then the idea was that, you know, you should base it off of what the research has shown to work. But the problem is the data, as I think Ashvin mentioned, is enormous. And it's just really impossible for physicians to keep up with all the data out there and what works best. And so what AI really can help with is processing that data to give physicians and other healthcare workers, you know, access to what does work best and, you know, inform them in a more global way so that evidence-based medicine can be practiced, whether you're at the world famous, you know, MD Anderson or at a small rural hospital. Physicians can have access to the technologies to make the decisions that really work best for every patient and decide, hey, should this patient, you know, have something simple or something more complex? Is this something that can be dealt with at this small hospital? Should they be transferred to someplace? And so I think really, you know, churning data and processing it and presenting it in a way and giving physicians and you know, nurses options on what should be managed in patients and how they should manage, and then letting them make the decision is where AI I see works really best. And I think a great example of this, and I think it's in practice in all the Houston hospitals, is this business of trying to fight sepsis. So sepsis, you know, is a condition where infection overwhelms your body, and really it's a really mysterious you know, problem why some patients will have a simple infection and get treated and get better, and other people process on to a huge systemic multi-organ failure and need ICU care and such. But what hospitals have implemented very successfully is in basically using a variety of data points from a patient's care to predict whether they will go into a septic picture, and then try and capture those patients and treat them aggressively before that happens. And I think this is where it's something, you know, physicians individually and nurses individually would have a really difficult time doing, but the data, when it's captured continuously on these patients, really is very successful at preventing that. So I think, you know, the word evidence-based care is something that's been out there, and AI can really help us, you know, sort through that evidence to decide what to do. So I just put that out there as a way to understand AI, because it seems sometimes so mysterious to people.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So I'm kind of looking through the chat, trying to manage time. And Dr. Black, it looks like there's a point and a question specifically for you. I'll just read the point. Tremendous talent in Greater Houston, especially Fort Bend. Harnessing it with small pilots, such as incubators, is a great launching point. And then the question by another viewer is, how did TMC, and I assume TMCX, get the first ones, and I'm assuming your businesses, get involved? What was the value proposition for participation?
It's a great question. I think the value proposition has remained pretty stable throughout the time that we've been open, about 6 years ago. And that is really access to great facilities, not only independent hospitals, but those stakeholders who are interested in working with novel technologies. And so we're highly focused on not necessarily to teach you how to build your company. That's where a lot of accelerators, I think, spend a lot of time and effort on programming. We're more focused on the potential relationship between the startup and one of our health systems. And then our responsibility is then to help to broker that deal, to make sure that the startup is putting their best foot forward. First and foremost, they're well-vetted companies, right? We don't want to present our health systems with companies that may not have the strongest executive management team, or may still be trying to figure out some fundamental issues about their business. We want well-vetted companies who are willing and able to work with enterprise-level clients. And that's asking a lot from a startup. And so we do a lot of work on vetting that on behalf of our hospital and health systems. On the opposite side of that, we want to make sure that the health systems know how to work with these companies. And so we're working with them hand in hand to understand what their needs are, their interest levels are, and how do they want to work with these companies. There's not a one size fits all, certainly not even within the TMC. And Aaron can attest to this. How MD Anderson works with novel startups is much different than maybe Methodist or Baylor or whatever have you. So we're trying to help those startup companies navigate the great marketplace that is the TMC. And because there's so much consolidated patient care, number of physicians and researchers there, it's to me a no-brainer for a startup entrepreneur to want to come to Houston to be able to validate their technology and their business hypotheses.
Thank you. So I think we're getting kind of really close, and I think we wanted to turn it over to you guys to kind of let you wrap up your own individual points here. So I'll say we've got about 10 minutes left. So 4 of you, about 2.5 minutes, I think would be in good shape. So I think let's just talk about new cutting edge innovations, something that we might not be aware of, maybe something that's in testing and what's on the horizon now. And then anything else I think that you think the audience would be better informed for having learned would be great. So Schwarna, I will start with you.
Mike, thanks. So I think, that's been, the public sees a lot, and they certainly see that from a surgical perspective, which is the area that I'm familiar with, that surgery has gone to less invasive procedures over time. Everything used to be multiple days in the hospital and large incisions, and we've gone to small incisions and more outpatient surgery. And that's continuing to accelerate, and especially with this pandemic. And that's one of my goals, is to get patients out of the hospital sooner so that, their recovery is safe and sound, and it can be accomplished in so many ways at home. We have great resources for managing pain at home, remote monitoring, but bowel function would be the one thing that's holding them up from an abdominal surgery point. I just recently heard something that's just amazing. So, over the past 25, 30 years, cardiac surgery used to be the way people pretty much had to have both, their coronary vessels revascularized, when you had a blockage and had heart attacks, and then also when you had a bad heart valve, you had to have surgery. Well, both of those procedures are now dwarfed by, percutaneous interventions, both to stenting and opening up your blood vessels, and when you have blockages, and then also aortic valve replacement, which used to be a huge procedure, is now one-sixth as many of surgical procedures done as transcutaneous TAVRs, which is percutaneous aortic valve replacement. And that's just amazing to think. In the past 15 years, we've gone from a place where we had to slice open someone's chest and pull out a bad aortic valve and implant a new one, which worked really well, but it was, definitely huge surgery and recovery for a patient, to a point where you could do that. You can now do that through a puncture in a groin and have a patient go home and resume good life, and it's quite durable. And I think, it's just revolutionary how much we've able to push things forward in terms of how we don't have to disturb the system to make people better. And I think that really is the wave of the future: less and less invasive procedures, and more outpatient and remote care. And I would encourage people to keep on the lookout and hear about those options when they need care.
Thank you very, very much. Dr. Flores.
Yeah, so, we are, like I said before, we've got a really rich research arm at MD Anderson. At our heart, at our core, we are an academic research center. And alongside all of the very rich clinical data that we collect from our patients, when you come in and you get your labs drawn, or when you come in and have chemotherapy given to you or surgery done, we collect all of that information. But we also collect a ton of research information that is very detailed. It's sometimes, as a former researcher, you kind of just collect everything before you, not really knowing what might be significant or what is significant now. And so we kind of tend to hoard data and just amass, a lot of data on our patients, and over time too, not just in single instances. And I think one thing that would be, that is really important for us, is to be able to marry those two data sets. Because if we can understand in real time what animal models are telling us, what human-based, biopsies and tissue specimens are telling us about how a tumor grows or reacts to certain drugs, then we can use that research to feed care in real time. And so for us, it's really important to accelerate the catch-all, bench to bedside. And we do have a really unique opportunity because we have such a great amount of data on our patients. And the reality, though, is that we don't have a really strong data infrastructure to do that in real time. And so we have actually just implemented something that's really robust and very powerful that will start to bring together these two worlds in patient care. And our physicians and our researchers are going to be able to really synthesize outcomes and ask questions in new ways that would not have been possible before without this really robust data platform. So that's really important to us, and it will help us accelerate, new discoveries for our patients, hopefully in the very near future and over the long term. And then another thing that I think patients can look out for from us are what the other panelists have spoken to with AI and conversations that are personalized, and really trying to understand not just you, the patient today at 9:45 for your clinic visit, but you, a holistic patient. You have financial needs, your support system has needs, your caregivers, your family members, we want to be able to support them also. So how can we use technology and digital experiences to really see each patient as a whole person and provide, the best delightful experiences for them. So those are some of the things that are really important to us right now.
Really good. Thank you. Dr. Dewan?
I think the few things are emerging, and I think the theme of personalized care is really starting to make a big wave. And what I mean by that is in the surgical realm, for example, simple example, we're seeing now disposable tools, for example, during my surgery that are customized to a specific patient. And what does that mean? I no longer am shoehorned into using a universal drill, for example. These customized tools are crafted to fit the patient's anatomy, and it eliminates a lot of the guesswork and potential for human error. And I think that's a big shift in way surgeons think, where we don't have to completely rely on human precision and accuracy, which at the end of the day is never going to be as good as perhaps something that's computer navigated or directed. I think another thing that I'm also very biased, but I think that the adoption of AI for managing care at scale is already emerging and is going to continue to grow. And it's inevitable with the way our health systems are taxed that we need something like that to augment the skill sets of our trained professionals and allow them to do more. And that's essentially the space that we at Case Control are playing in. Finally, along the lines also of what Swarna said, as we all are shooting for more minimally invasive surgery. And I think one thing that is very close on the horizon is kind of augmented reality in the OR. Imagine like doing a surgery where you're being able to peer inside without actually making a large exposure. And once we master that, getting also real-time feedback in the future as a surgeon is doing their surgery. For example, like there's a blood vessel within a few millimeters, be careful. And I think things like that are going to become more and more commonplace and are only going to improve patient care.
That was great. Dr. Black, I'll let you have the last word here.
Can I just say ditto and be done with it? Just kidding. Great answers, and really outlined what I was thinking of as well. It's interesting. I remember when we first went into the Zoom world, and you start seeing people differently in their own homes. You see their pets, you see like their furniture, and you start experiencing that relationship in a much different way. And I think the healthcare system is going to have to be doing just that. We've been talking a lot about pushing healthcare out of the four walls of the hospital. How do we remotely monitor and virtually care for our patients for a long time? And because of COVID, I think we're doing that now at an exponential rate. And so that's where I see enabling technology having the biggest impact, and where innovation, in my mind, is going to have the biggest headline is this new ways of acquiring data, new ways of synthesizing said data, and the new ways of presenting that data to a physician or to a care team who can actually do something about it. There's tons of great sensors and technology out there, but then you get down to it and you're like, really, does your physician want to see another dashboard or another thing they have to log into, or another screen to stare at? When I think really where we're on the edge of is starting to integrate all that and synthesize it in a way that becomes more and more seamless. so that when you do walk into the OR, things are no longer having to be thought of, they're thought for you, and you're there just to practice healthcare. And the same applies to reaching out to your patients who you just did surgery on. Why should they have to wait for a certain appointment time? Why can't you just reach out to them when it's the most meaningful in their lives as well as in your practice? And so I see a lot of really great sensors. I see a lot of great AI, and I'm just excited to see how those things start to come together in a industry who's notoriously fragmented and siloed. So that's the other obstacle that we are, I think, breaking down because of technology. And I think that's going to be what's going to shift, this mindset of where we're at now to more consumerism, where now when you order a package from Amazon, it takes 2 days. Now when you want an appointment, it's going to take minutes for you to meet with the provider and give him or her all the information necessary to make a great decision. So I know that's not a great specific answer, but I see a lot of technology coming together to be able to support that kind of future of healthcare.
So Dr. Black, can't thank you enough for putting this together. Y'all were awesome. I think this was really, really cool for anybody that would have tuned in, and certainly those that'll watch in the future on Facebook. Really cool topic and great answers, and kudos to all of you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. With that said, the chamber wants me to call attention to a few dates this month. On Tuesday, the 8th at 8:30, from 8:30 to 10:10, the chambers and the EDC are going to host the Fort Bend County Business Collaborative 2021 legislative presentation via Zoom. And then on the 11th at noon, from noon to 1, the Chamber's Education Division is going to host a Stafford MSD update via Zoom as well. Any other events that you'd like to see, you can visit the Chamber online at www.fortbendchamber.com. I want to thank everybody for attending today. This was great. Be safe, stay calm. Vaccines are coming, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks to the chamber. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.